startup. You have to think of like from day one of Facebook. You're always going to try out new ideas. You gotta just stick to your plan.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that the transition from the transition to being a full-time trader had its challenges at the beginning, just because it was a change for you. Did you in that like that time after you quit your job, was there any thought about going back to your full-time job?
No, never, not even for 1 second. I wasn't gonna go out like that. That wasn't in my mind, because I know that everything in business, right? I'm looking at trading as a business. I'm the CEO of my company. You're always going to try out new ideas and test out new ideas and new theories, and right, you would make adjustments. One thing works, so you keep doing it. Another thing doesn't work, you try something else. And so, I had a good idea that, I wasn't hitting the exact results I wanted, but I was able to pinpoint out, where I was doing things differently than I was before, and so where to make adjustments. To me, it was really just a game, right? I've got to get the right formula, the right recipe to nail this thing down and really hit my stride. And so whether, that took a few months or not, I was okay with that. I just had to keep making improvement, and that's what I was really judging, my progress on, was not just the dollars and cents, but, did I see myself making continuous improvement, as a CEO? Did I see myself garnering and gathering new skills? Was I getting better every day? Was I still able to put in the same type of passion and work every day that I knew was necessary to be really good? And as long as those things were in play and I'm seeing improvement, right? I'm a better person and a better trader today than yesterday, right? I made some improvement. I was able to tweak some things. Then I'm heading in the right direction, because I had already shown that I was able to make money. I was doing it while I was working.
Okay, so now take us through, you're now a full-time trader. Take us through, the process of how you got into, educating other people to become traders.
Sure. So I started Bulls on Wall Street while I had a job. I was already a pretty good trader, and so I was already running my chat room while I had a job. I already had the transition in works, and so that was always in the back of my mind. I was approached by a gentleman, Rahul Sood, my first business partner, and we were always sharing ideas on Twitter and stuff, and he said, well, we should get all these traders that you talk with on Twitter together, like, in some more of a formal structure of, a chat room. So I said, yeah, no problem. I mean, we're already out there posting our trades every day anyways, let's do that. And then, over the course of the years, we kind of materialized into what we are now. At some point, you have a couple hundred people in a chat room, and then it's like, well, what's next? Like, people are always asking me, like, how do you know this or how do you know that? And, I realized I needed a much more formal structure to actually go out and, have some educated students, rather than just a chat room where people are just blindly following you. In trading, if you follow somebody else's ideas, it never works. I've never seen any chat room, even mine, where somebody just comes in and is like, oh, I'm just going to do exactly what Kunal says, I'm going to make a bunch of money. It doesn't work like that, because when you have your own money into play and your own emotions, you're going to react differently when you see different things. I could buy a stock and have 5,000 shares, and I may be really loose with it, saying I'm willing to risk $5,000. Well, I mean, that's not something that everybody can risk, right? I mean, everybody has their own tolerances, but that stock may be going up, and it could go up 20%, and I might say, you know what, I think it's going to go up 100%. And you may look at it and go, man, 20% is a lot of money, I got to pay some bills. So you sell it, and that ends up being like the trade of the year. Well, now, right, you've already gone off a different path. And so, having a chat room is great for the collaboration of really what's a lonely business, sitting in your room or your office by yourself. The chat room is amazing to make friends, for your education, to share ideas, but to really just sit there and mimic somebody, right? Life is not like that. Nobody can just mimic anybody. We're all our own people. And so, I needed to get, my members also educated so that they actually knew what I was talking about in the chat room.
So was the boot camp the first educational program that you put together?
Yes. The boot camp was, and during that time I had been training some students one-on-one. All three of those students actually work for me now. But, I was doing it over Skype, and there was nothing formal. It was just, a give and take between a mentor and a student. And I had a lot of fun with it, and they were actually really progressing really well. And so it was just a natural thing to look at what I was doing with them and take out the parts that were successful and put it into a program. Put it into a real program where, you're doing it in front of a few people rather than just one person.
So who's been your most successful student thus far?
I have a few that I'm really proud of. A whole host of them that I'm really proud of. But, I have Mary Beth, who's my business partner. She really started off the gate really great and has been now my right-hand partner for the last 4 years. Jake Novakovic, he's actually going to be doing a seminar with in front of everybody for the Trading Mastery Summit also. He's a sharp young man. He must be 27, 28 years old. And he started off a little bit slow and really was able to catch a good groove by identifying his strengths and weaknesses and then improving on them and really taking what I taught him and then making it his own, putting his own twist on it. Chris Zielinski is another one of my students. He owns Green Bar Trading. Amazing young man, frankly, much smarter than me. He's a scary, smart type of guy. A great trader. He runs a great service and an educational company similar to mine, and just a nice guy to boot. I have a Skip, Rick Jack. He's actually one of the partners at a firm called Bio Runup, and they do biotech trading. And Skip is the man. He's a young man that lives in Austin. He made $700,000 last year. He was one of my favorite students, and now he's going off and doing his own thing, and it's pretty cool. He also was very similar to Jake and Chris, where he took what I taught him, and then he made it his own. He loved biotech stocks. He had a background growing up into the pharmaceutical industry, and so he had some knowledge of that. And so he took what we learned and taught about momentum and technical analysis, and then he made it his own. He attached it to this biotech industry where he has a real passion for it, and he just ended up killing it last year. Just an awesome dude.
Okay, so you're really well known for running this business with 3 of your closest friends from when you were a kid, and that's probably every guy's dream is to do something like that.
The bromance.
Yeah, exactly. So take us to when they came on and started to help you out.
So me and the 3 Stooges, just kidding, those are my brothers. We actually call ourselves Peter Pan and the Lost Boys. Well, that's what our girlfriends do. We came aboard many of moons ago. First it was Tim that came on. He actually had an idea. It was his idea to really start doing the boot camp education. He had looked at it, and he was working in Chicago and was like, hey, I think that you need to kind of expand this thing and take what you're doing on this one-on-one and make it into a formal program. I can help you with it and come in and help you with sales. And I was like, we're a small company. I don't know if we have really the resources to do that. And he said, well, as your friend, I'll just do it because that's what we do. And so I said, all right, cool. Let's do this. Me and you back in action, from, I've known him since I was 12 years old, and, now we're 30. And so we're back in action 18 years later. And so he came aboard, and then things really started to go, and he was doing a good job and working with Mary Beth, and they were growing the business side of the business while I traded and teached. And, we were getting really busy, and we needed some customer service people. And so the nicest guy I know and the one with the biggest heart is my friend Kevin. He's just got an amazing way of talking to people. He's like a really patient guy. And so, I called him. I said, listen, man, I got a growing business, but I don't have that much money to pay anybody. I need you to do me a solid and come aboard with me. He said, oh, I got this job. It's pretty good. He's like, how much you gonna pay me? And I'm like, probably nothing. He's like, cool, I'm in. I'm like, I asked him to do it, and he did it. And then Omar was the last holdout. And when we needed another sales guy, he came aboard. And it was pretty cool because my friends came, and I wasn't really paying them much at the first. It was like a couple $100 a week. It was just a thing of, when your brother asked you to do something, you do it, because I told them this was my dream, and they're working jobs, and they weren't working their dream, but they knew I had one, and they believed in it. And we share the same values, and we come from the same place. And so they took a leap of faith, just like Mary Beth did, and said, you know what, let's see what happens. I think together we could do something pretty cool, and at the worst we'll have a lot of fun. And so that's what we did. All of them came aboard. We moved to Costa Rica for a few months in Tamarindo. We brought all our computers with us, and we just decided that for the next 90 days, we're going to work and surf and work and surf and work and maybe drink some beers once in a while and do it as brothers. And so that's what we did. We tore up Costa Rica and saw everything, and we worked, and it was just this amazing experience. And that really brought us all closer together too, because we're literally on top of each other, working and living for 90 days. And that was really the start of when we started to catch our groove, bringing that team together like that, especially in a foreign country where it's just you and them, right? And then, we didn't speak the language or anything, and so it was pretty cool.
So how did that feel to you that, your childhood friends believed in you that much? They'd quit their jobs and they would come, work for you? Or with you?
For me, it was not a surprise, because we've always been like that. Like, I was touched, of course, but we had been talking about something like this even in little kids. When you're a little kid and you're running around riding bikes and you're like, dude, we're gonna all work together and be firefighters or whatever. Like, we had been talking about this since middle school. So it was already always in the back of our mind. And then, of course, you get older and the reality of life gets in the way and everybody separates. And you find out that, growing up kind of sucks. Like, you separate and you get your own thing going, and you got your own job and your own career. And then, you're in some city and you're by yourself and going, dude, what am I doing with myself? Like, where are my friends? Like, where are my family? Like, how am I spending my days? And that's kind of how we were all like in our 20s. We all went our separate ways. Like, sure, we were all best friends, but one guy was living in Chicago, one guy was living in Michigan, another guy was down over here, and we were all separated, and we all kind of came together, and it was just, because we share the same values, we're all just like, man, growing up was not as cool as I thought. Like, it's like, I know some people in Chicago, and I have a okay job, but, that family atmosphere is gone. Like, it wasn't there, and so coming back together really invigorated us. It was like we turned back the clock, and that was pretty cool.